Welcome everyone, this is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent. In today's Reddit rant, we are going to be discussing just a handful of articles, really two, touching on the news of the day and the things that are most interesting to the left. In particular, I want to point out some trends that happen in the narrative as we go along and discuss it, so that we can see what is emerging amongst the left, what is gaining traction amongst people who follow the left. Frankly, Reddit is dominated by left-thinking, left-leaning, left-oriented publications, and particularly on the politics thread. So if we want to be able to combat this kind of shenanigans, we should probably understand it. First article up comes from The New Republic. There's that's a bureaucrat's face. I don't know about you, but when I see that, I think middle manager or bureaucrat. What can you do? GOP official panics when asked for reason to remove Biden from the ballot. So this is the Missouri Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft. Wasn't there a John Ashcroft high in Republican circles? I guess maybe they're related. If so, nepotism takes you far, I guess. Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft completely melted down on Monday when he tried to explain why it would be justified to kick Joe Biden off his state's primary ballot. The U.S. Supreme Court announced last week that it would decide whether Donald Trump should appear on state ballots. The former president has already been kicked off the ballot in Maine and Colorado. Ashcroft responded by threatening to remove Biden from the Missouri ballot if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn the other states' decisions. When CNN anchor Boris Sanchez asked Ashcroft what justification he would have for such a move, Ashcroft faltered. There have been allegations that he's engaged in insurrection. When pressed for details, Ashcroft said he'd seen allegations from the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, but then suddenly seemed incapable of stringing a sentence together. Let's not rely on the report. Let's judge for ourselves. I haven't seen this article.
I'm sure the Supreme Court will settle whether you can remove someone from the ballot or not, or potentially give guidance on that. I'm wondering, though, what would then be your justification for removing Joe Biden from the ballot in Missouri? Has he engaged, in your mind, in some kind of insurrection?
There have been allegations that he's engaged in insurrection.
How so?
And no, please let me finish. There have only been allegations.
You can't say something like that and not back it up. What do you mean?
I am continuing, but you interrupted me before I could back it up.
Go ahead,
Are you scared of the truth?
Oh, I'm not terrified of the truth at all. It seems like you might be. Let's hear what you have to say.
There have only been allegations against
what allegations?
President Trump has never been adjudicated guilty in a court of law.
What did Joe Biden do, in your mind, that equates insurrection? What allegations are you talking about?
I have seen allegations from the Lieutenant Governor of Texas that has said that Joe Biden has been part of insurrection or rebellion. We've seen the governor of Florida say the same thing. Those are allegations.
Over what? What did the governor of Texas say that Joe Biden was causing an insurrection over? If you're going to make the claim, give me some specifics. Are you just going to cite the governor of Texas or Florida and not actually say what they are arguing? Do you know what they're arguing?
What I'm telling you is this. They made allegations, and all it took for former President Trump to be taken off the ballot in Colorado and in Maine were allegations. We should not be a country that removes people from the ballot based on allegations. I think you can agree with that.
I think it depends to a degree.
Oh, so your guy can be removed from the ballot.
My guy, Joe Biden is not my guy. You don't know who my guy is. The point is, sir, the point is that it's not clear whether the 14th Amendment is self-executing or not. In other words, it doesn't matter to a court at that point whether there was a conviction of Donald Trump for insurrection or not. That is a...
Okay, so I don't know where you stand on that, but when I look at that, I don't see someone blubbering, someone having a complete meltdown. What I see is a jerk reporter interrupting someone who's not a very gifted speaker, frazzling them and breaking their train of thought and having them and ah for about 30 seconds. He then collects himself and presents a cogent point. The cogent point he's making, very poorly, but the cogent point he's making is that if what's good for the goose is good for the gander, if it is valid for state authorities to remove a presidential candidate of a major party based on allegations, based on nothing proven, much less charged, then it's okay for the other party to do the same. This is politics 101, reciprocity. He's doing it weirdly and kind of backwards by saying, well, we should remove Joe Biden because if they can remove Trump, we can remove Joe Biden. And that kind of schoolyard, I know you are, but what am I, sort of reasoning is annoying. But his underlying point is sound. This is why legacy media is both frustrating and so outmoded. This is a gotcha moment. This is, haha, I got a clip, I got a soundbite. I made someone with an R by their name look bad. I'm going to get a chance to lead the news. And sure enough, here we are, leading Reddit. It doesn't move us anywhere towards resolution. It's a mess. Earlier in the interview, Sanchez asked why Ashcroft felt he had the authority to remove Biden from the ballot. The Missouri State Constitution says that the Secretary of State cannot unilaterally disqualify a candidate and would need to challenge a candidate's eligibility in court. Ashcroft accused Sanchez of lying. Ashcroft's main argument seems to be that Trump shouldn't be disqualified because he has not yet been convicted of insurrection, only accused of it. It's an interesting set of framing, and again, when you're paying attention to the language, you'll see these kind of tricks hidden throughout. That seems to imply that he has currently been charged with it without being said. It says he's accused of it, but he has not yet been convicted. Someone who has relatively low information might look at that and say, okay, well, that makes sense. He's been accused, he's under trial. At the end of the trial, he may be convicted, except he hasn't been charged with insurrection. Moreover, if you look at the January 6th defendants, there's over 1,000 of them. Guess how many of them have been charged with insurrection? None. So how do you have an insurrection without charging anybody for insurrection? How do you have an insurrection inspired by someone who never called for violence? This thing falls apart if you just breathe on it. But it is a topic that can agitate the left base because they can use clever tricks to not get charged with defamation, not get charged with saying false statements, because it is true he has not yet been convicted of insurrection, because theoretically he could be convicted at some point in the future. It's also not true that he has been accused of it. Many people in the media have accused him of committing insurrection, but in the court of law, he hasn't even been charged with it, much less convicted. Ashcroft also said that states should not be able to disqualify candidates from the ballot, failing to see the irony of his threat to do just that to Biden. We watched the full clip that they offered here in the body of this article, and in that he makes the point that no one should be doing that, that proposing Biden be removed is ridiculous on its face, thereby showing how ridiculous it is that Trump was removed. That this is a bad standard and no one should be removed from the ballot by state authorities. That's his point. He said it explicitly, but here they are twisting his words. A major difference, though, is that Trump has been indicted twice. Okay, indicted for what? Once at a federal level and again at the state level for trying to overturn the 2020 election. If you contest an election, that makes you a bad guy? Can we go back in the Wayback Machine and see how the Democrats responded in 2000 after George Bush won, 2004 after George Bush won again, 2016 after Trump won the first time? How did Hillary respond in the wake of that election? I think she challenged it just a little bit, just a little bit. And somehow she's not a bad guy. And all of the evidence that has been reported so far seems pretty damning. Well, gosh, if that's the legal standard for the criminal justice system, we're going to lead to all sorts of interesting places. Well, the evidence that was reported seemed pretty solid, so let's go ahead and convict. That's not how this works. Trump was disqualified last month from the primary ballots in Colorado and Maine after the Colorado Supreme Court and Maine Secretary of State determined that he had engaged in insurrection, was therefore constitutionally ineligible to run for president. That's so amazing that a state Supreme Court and a state administrative official of two different states, neither of which have jurisdiction over the events of January 6th or the events leading up to it or anything related to what is described as an insurrection, They have no jurisdiction over that. And yet somehow they are able to determine that he had engaged in insurrection without ever having a trial over that. You might even be able to argue, if you think about it, that being eligible to run for president is a constitutional right, in the sense that in the Constitution, it defines eligibility for running for president, and it defines ways in which you can lose certain constitutional rights. In other words, there's precedent in our system that those who have broken the rules of our society so egregiously it has been deemed just to remove some of their civil rights from them, some of those rights that the Constitution should protect in general. For instance, if you have committed a felony, you might have issues with purchasing and owning a firearm, depending on where you live and nature of your felony. If you have been convicted of being a sex offender, you lose some of your privacy rights as you sign in to be a registrar for, and in many cases, that's for the rest of your life. What we're saying is that these state officials have deprived a citizen of his constitutional right to run for president in their state based on events that they have no jurisdiction over, based on a statute that exists at the federal level, based on a statute that should be put in force by Congress. Read Section 5. These two entities have just magically determined that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, and therefore can't run for president. Stripped him of his constitutional right. Doesn't pass the sniff test to me. Shortly after the Colorado ruling, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick threatened to kick Biden off the Lone Star State ballot in retribution. By the way, whom Ashcroft referred to in Monday's disastrous interview. This was a disastrous interview. Here's why. It's rhetorical tricks 101. When you intentionally interrupt someone repeatedly, you can fluster them, especially if they're not a skilled rhetorical speaker, which this guy has not spent a lot of time in prime time. He's the Secretary of State of a very minor state. He's not a big player, particularly at a national stage. Here he yells on CNN, and he gets steamrolled by the guy. It's gotcha journalism 101. Ugh, what a mess. So it was a disaster, but not for the reasons you might think. Next, what do you know? Also the New Republic. They're getting a lot of traction on Reddit these days. Roger Stone plotted assassinating Democrats, bombshell report says. New audio obtained by Mediaite finds the former Trump advisor wanted to kill top Democratic officials. Explosive new audio of Roger Stone reveals the longtime Trump ally was trying to plot the assassinations of two outspoken Democrat congressmen. That's a pretty serious charge. In fact, that's serious enough. That's conspiracy to commit murder. And it's only been a couple of years since it happened. So I feel like if that's solid, you should refer that to the authorities and he should be arrested, prosecuted, and given a chance to defend himself in a court of law. And at which point, if he's convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, he should go to jail. I have no problem upholding the law. What I don't like is smear tactics in the court of public opinion. A few weeks before the 2020 election, Stone told a member of his security detail that he wanted either Swalwell or Nadler or both killed. At the time, Nadler just announced that they were going to investigate Trump's decision to commute Stone's sentence for federal crimes. It's time to do it, Stone told Sal Greco, then a member of the NYPD who was working on Stone's security. Let's go find Swalwell. It's time to do it. Then we'll see how brave the rest of them are. It's time to do it. It's either Nadler or Swalwell has to die before the election. They need to get the message. Let's go find Swalwell and get this over with. I'm just not putting up with this stuff anymore. Based on how we generally look at these things, my first thought was, let's hear it. Let's hear what he said. They're claiming to have recorded audio. That's their source of the evidence on this. I couldn't find it. Interesting enough, I have multiple articles that reference the audio, but no one embeds it. No one puts it in there. You would think that if you had that as part of a recording, you could clip it, put it right there as a link. But I searched before I did this video. They don't want to share it. Now, why wouldn't you want to share your source? I'm not defending Roger Stone per se. I'm defending due process, the rule of law. People deserve the presumption of innocence, okay? People deserve a trial by a jury of their peers. These are basic civil rights that are still a thing and should remain a thing if we want to remain a country. So, Stone denied making the comments about Zelensky, Swalwell, or Nadler and said the audio had been made with artificial intelligence. Now, 10 years ago, that's going to sound like BS. But if you've been paying any kind of attention in technical developments over the last year or two, AI audio has come a long way, and we're only a couple of years away from AI video being equally convincing. When you can sync those two things up, you could literally make a video of anybody saying and doing anything. It's terrifying to realize that that kind of technology is in reach. And all it takes is a small audio sample of someone speaking to make it sound authentic. I don't know if you've looked at that, experimented with that. Check it out. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty cool from a nerd perspective. It's also pretty freaking crazy. The short version is that's possibly what happened. I'm not even saying probable or likely. It's possible. You know what we should do if we have serious allegations against an individual who is politically divisive? We should be very careful what we say about them. And we should refer any evidence we have over to the legal authorities and let them prosecute. I'm totally okay with that. That's not the process we're doing. We're having a smear campaign. We'll see if Roger Stone continues to be run through the mud in days to come. This is Nathan Lindorf with Rational Independent. That's been my Reddit rant today. Good luck out there.